Good morning, good afternoon. How's it going out there, folks? It is the Earthmaster on this Saturday. The weekend is upon us here. Cold one again out here in Northern California. February 25th, 2023. March coming right around the corner. Looking forward to some of those warmer days ahead. It is about 10:20 a.m. here along the west coast in California. That is where the latest earthquake is at, a 1.5 coming in. Looks like somewhere out here around Nevada or California, the west coast. Did see some earthquake activity here in Japan ramping up, 6.0 overnight. Let's go ahead and check out some specifics out here with this earthquake. Kicking up here on the, basically the southern end of the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench. Goodness. It is in a zone that we've been watching and waiting for some larger scale activity, but I'm thinking much larger than a 6.0. This came in about 50 kilometers deep early this morning, about 4 or 5 hours ago. Did have some movement further up north along the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench last night. This is kind of an overall pattern that we've seen here along the northern end of the Pacific Plate. Here's the last 7 days of got to bring in some smaller quakes so we can see the activity that's been kicking up here across the plate boundary here. We got the North American Plate up to the north here, and the Pacific Plate here south of this red line. That's the plate boundary, which is a subduction zone. And got the Pacific Plate being subducted underneath the North American Plate here at this red line level, and that region can build up quite a bit of strain and some stress in a short amount of time. You do get some large earthquakes up here, of course. 9.0s over here along the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench, and the Aleutian Trench can get those 9-pointers. But we've noticed over the past couple days here an increasing movement up here along the Alaska area, the Aleutian Trench. That's the subduction zone area. And it looks as though we're starting to fill in slightly around the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench. Let me show you guys the plate movement here. Here's the area in question. That's the Aleutian Trench, where we've been noticing a little bit of uptick and movement all across the area up here. With the general plate movement, notice these arrows indicating the general movement of the Pacific Plate, which is in kind of this yellowish color. At least it somewhat looks yellow here on my side. This specific area right here, Japan Trench northward into the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench, has been one of the regions that has not really moved at all. Meanwhile, we've seen actually quite a bit of activity down south along the Tonga Trench area, Papua New Guinea, a whole bunch of movement across the Filipino Plate. And it's just, looks like it's finally just starting to catch up a little bit up here around the northwestern segment of the Pacific Plate, and that's going to be the interaction between the Pacific Plate here in the yellow and the North American Plate here at the brown. It kind of squeezes in here. This is the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench. The Japan Trench sits right about here at this bend. Either way, this is all backed up, reinforced by further stress from the northwest. Notice the arrows pointing down in that general direction. So not only is this a major subduction zone, but this whole area is being reinforced with stress and strain from the Eurasia Plate and the North American Plate up here in this region. So I'd keep my eyes open a little bit further, or possibly for some further activity in this area, considering that we're starting to get a little bit of adjustment now within this region. 6.0, very minor compared to what this region can see. Of course, down south here, we did have that 9-pointer. Back in 2011, I think a lot of folks remember that one. Pretty damaging earthquake and a subsequent tsunami. But this area right here, the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench, has not really seen any major movement. I'm talking about probably above a 7.0 in quite a while. And this area can see some very large earthquakes in the terms of megaquake. So we'll continue to watch this area now that it's starting to show a little bit of movement. The rest of the Pacific Plate, Alaska still remains fairly active here today, getting a little bit of swarming in certain regions across the mountains, and one of these volcanoes over here had a little bit of swarming last week. Looks like that has since died down. Notice the large volcanic features out here. Looks like the last one was a couple days ago. But either way, they had a pretty good swarm of movement. That has died down. But we're still seeing some other areas around the Trident Volcano, Mount Martin area. A couple different mountain ranges out here and volcanoes. Got to watch out here. This area has been showing some movement over the past few months with off and on swarming. It appears to be in that same process currently. Also a little separate swarming down here off the, what is that, the Kennedy entrance area. Although this activity is not surface feature, but down there into the subduction zone, they did see a 4.6 yesterday with quite a bit of aftershock activity in the 2 range. But also still very shallow, about 36 kilometers deep. Major subduction zone sits here. And all sorts of large earthquakes have taken place here historically. Let's see, West Coast movement. What do we got here in Northern California? All right, so we are seeing a little bit of adjustment down into the southern end of the Cascadia as expected. 31 kilometer deep, 2.7. Now, this is not a surface earthquake. This is down there into the subduction zone of the Cascadia, 31 kilometers underneath the surface here. And the tremor activity occurs roughly between 35 and 45 kilometers further down. Just a little bit, actually, that's just a little bit further down. But you have to look on the map to see where the tremor takes place. And this is going to be it right here. This activity is a little bit further east on the map compared to this earthquake, right? Notice the earthquake position, tremor activity occurring due east by a little distance, but this is further down than the earthquake that took place. This is about 45 kilometers deep. So when you get this tremor activity, excuse me, it tends to add strain upstream, and that would explain the earthquake activity we've seen this morning. This tremor activity was from yesterday, by the way. So I'm guessing and assuming with this earthquake activity that we're seeing, or the earthquake activity we're seeing today, that we should see this tremor activity continue in tonight's update. So we'll watch for that. But either way, stress builds up with tremor, and that's from yesterday along the Cascadia subduction zone. So we'll watch for some further movement here across the area. I always get worried when we see a tremor uptick because that's an obvious sign of, regional stress as a whole along the Cascadia. California, aside from a bunch of snow, low elevation snow down south, bunch of much needed rainfall in Southern California, earthquake activity, fairly quiet. But watch these fault systems here over the next couple weeks, next couple months, depending on how wound up some of these faults are. We know the San Andreas fault here is. It's well overdue for a big one. That's the southern branch here. Talking about 8.1. That's what some seismologists are talking about when it does decide to go. So the strain's there. But also at the same time, we have various other fault systems around the Los Angeles area and southward that pose a major hazardous risk for the Southern California area. A lot of times we get these significant rainfall events, and it takes a little while to soak down into the faults. But what it does is, it kind of gives them a kickstart there, kind of loosens things up, so to speak, after being wound tight so much, for so many years, and then we get earthquake activity. Definitely can trigger earthquake activity when it comes to a lot of rainfall in some of these fault systems. So we'll watch that here in the coming weeks. Don't think it's going to happen today, but you never know. They had quite a bit of rainfall, and a lot of those fault systems run at the surface. Oklahoma, what do we got here in the beautiful state of Oklahoma? 2.4 coming in south of the OKC area. I know you guys got some severe weather threat coming up here in a couple days, and that's going to be associated with this low pressure system that Southern California is dealing with. It's going to track east and kind of northward a little bit and provide Oklahoma with a severe weather threat for some tornadoes and other forms of severe weather in the coming days, so watch for that. Be alert. A little bit of activity out here along a fracture zone, Orozco fracture zone. Don't quite have my R's ready yet, but a couple fours kicking off out here. Got 3 of them. I came in just after 10 o'clock last night. Actually, I take that back. Probably 4, because this is definitely associated with this plate boundary. And what that does, this area right here tends to, let's see if we got it listed on the map. They don't. But when we have the activity that we're seeing today, that's on the Pacific and the Cocos Plate boundary. We got a little plate here called the Cocos Plate. Yes, it's Pacific Ocean. It doesn't change just because it's a different plate. But when we see these fracture zones tend to separate because it's a divergent boundary, that will add further strain and stress here along the subduction zone areas. And that's the Middle America Trench right here, Mexico South. And today, let's see what we got for movement. Not seeing any uptick yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. We'll watch this area here along the Middle America Trench for some activity following this divergent boundary movement. Costa Rica looks like 3.9. Some other activity here around the Haiti area. Am I correct here? Let me see where we're at. These guys aren't showing the 3.9, but looks like some activity kicking up over here around Haiti. Puerto Rico area got about 7 earthquakes. Not that big of a deal, but notice that it's confined mostly to the southwestern edge of Puerto Rico, where our typical swarm takes place. And when that happens, things tend to go quiet elsewhere around this region of the Caribbean plate. It's how it works. South America area, 2 earthquakes up here on the map, a 4.8, the latest here in Chile. This region has been showing some seismic increasing activity over the past couple days, with kind of a migration to the south. It looks like it wants to migrate further south along the subduction zone. So we continue to watch that. See what we got for activity here. Some other smaller quakes. Looks like a let's see here. Looks like a 3.9 just coming in to the region here. 255 kilometers deep in Chile. I was just looking, seeing if I can see it on here. That's probably just too deep to see it on the seismograph. Let's see, what else we got besides the regional activity up here really ramping up. Notice that major uptick here across the northwestern portion of the Pacific plate. And it is stretching down here along the northwestern edge of the Filipino plate. So as a whole, got to remember this Filipino plate is just a little piece of the puzzle when it comes to the Eurasia plate and the Pacific plate. These are 2 ginormous plates. And if you get the Pacific plate moving, this little Filipino plate's not going to stop the northwestward momentum of the pressure. And you can see it strictly right along this plate boundary. But also at the same time, once this builds up here, say, for example, it continues to build up strain without releasing earthquake activity, might want to watch the Mariana Trench, the Izu Trench area, because that is a subduction zone region associated with the Pacific plate. It's a lot going on here. Getting a pretty big cluster of earthquake activity across the Molucca Sea, Banda Sea area, southern end of the Java Trench today. Last time we seen this, we seen I think it was a 6-pointer that kicked up in this area. So swarms over a large region here, such as what we're seeing right now, tend to point towards some much larger scale activity. So I wouldn't doubt it. The question is where is the key. A couple different areas have not been hit. Let's check out the last 30 days, 4.5 and above over here. Here's the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. Notice very minor activity. A lot of it's deeper, adding some further strain up along the main interface here of the subduction zone. So even though we're getting earthquake activity, this is very minor. Definitely watch this zone right here. And there's still another region with that westward pressure movement here, north, about the northern end of the Java Trench, up around the Andaman Sea, heading up through the Himalayas in this way. This area has been awfully quiet, and it's normally at least moving a little bit. Right now, there's not a whole lot showing up here along this plate boundary, so that's another specific region of large-scale activity to watch. Let's see what we got here. I know the Tonga Trench, Kermadec Trench, all been hitting pretty nicely with a lot of earthquake activity, including New Zealand down there. But today, that's a different story. Very quiet across the area. And that includes the EMSC model, not reporting anything across this area. Now, I'm sure GeoNet servers are having at least maybe some 1s and 2s. Let's see what we got here. All magnitudes. There we got 2.0 just outside Wellington, North Island, 6 kilometers deep 14 minutes ago. So there's always going to be some earthquake activity down there into the New Zealand area. It does sit along a major plate boundary, but anything of noticeable activity just doesn't look like it's there. There's a 2.8 supposedly around the South Island 4 hours ago. But far as anything above that, very quiet across the area of New Zealand today. A look at the earthquake drums. Let's see here. There's a little bit of activity from yesterday, but looking at, let's see what we got here. A little bit of activity. Here's that movement kicking off South Island area. Kind of looks like there's a little bit of swarming kicking up here, specifically around this region. Now, this red dot here is going to be the location of the seismograph, and definitely looks like there's some 2s, and what they say it may be a 3-pointer in there as well. And that's just off the Alpine Fault, it looks like. I don't think that's associated with the Alpine Fault, but a different fault system that runs through there, showing a little bit of seismic activity. But overall, as far as the grand scheme of things here, it's very quiet in terms of plate dynamics out here. So this is another area. It's been like this for 2 days now. But we did have quite a bit of deeper movement over the last week or so in this area. And that deeper movement has to go somewhere, right? The momentum. You get deeper movement downstream into the subduction zones. That adds further strain up here, but say for example, if there's not quite enough stress built up in these areas along the subduction zone, that momentum will shift here, and that whole Pacific plate kind of puts further strain in the areas to the west. It's just that's how it works here. The direction of the arrows indicating that westward plate movement. All right, let's see what else we have. What do we got in Southern Cal? I've seen an earthquake come in here, 1.6, Loma Linda area. All right, let's see what else we have. I think that's about it as far as any large-scale activity goes. Turkey did see a 5.3 overnight, somewhat of a moderate aftershock there in that region, but notice that it's westward again. Let's see what we got for 30 days. It's been trying, if you look here, that momentum from last week's earthquakes and even a little bit over the last couple days has been trying to go this way around that plate boundary. Now, let's see here. Arabia plate, Anatolia plate. There's a couple other smaller plates that are missing here from the main plate map. So I know there's one that kind of runs up here through a portion of Turkey and up around this region. So I think that's what we're missing up here. I'll have to bring up a different plate tectonic map here for this area later tonight and show you guys what I mean. But definitely trying to go along this plate boundary, work its way westward here. That's still a huge migration of earthquake activity over the past couple weeks. And aftershock activity today broadly spread out across that region. What do we got going on up here in the UK, or England, excuse me. Well, United Kingdom, outside of, well, it's well southwest of Birmingham, it looks like. Eh, not too familiar with this area. The Black Mountains. This is definitely another area I would love to visit. Ireland. I want to see those, all those cliffs out there. Can't remember what they're called, but they're absolutely stunning. I remember looking at them in history class when I was a kid, and they just stuck in my mind. But yeah, for England area, looks like we did have a 3.4 from yesterday. I'm really surprised USGS is showing that. Notice that? Every once in a while, they'll throw up a 3-pointer somewhere. And that's somewhat odd for them because they normally stick to 4.0 and above for the international community. All right, let's see what else we got here. Yellowstone National Park. Let's see. Not a whole lot going on. If you guys are wondering about the signature right here at the promontory, Parker Peak, some of these seismographs are showing them. Maple Creek. That is going to be the 6-pointer in Japan. Yes, this is just another example of how I can tell magnitudes from this distance. There, 6-pointers for the most part will show up around the globe, and the Yellowstone stations are fairly goodness, they're fairly tuned. Oh man, I had one of those strawberry and cheese danishes. They're so yummy. But for whatever reason, that almost wanted to come back up. That was not good. Goodness. Alrighty, moving on. So yeah, that's what we look for when it comes to some earthquake activity at a distance. 6.0 is definitely showing up there. Oh man. All right. Space weather activity. We did see, looks like another M flare overnight. Just a little bit here. A little small M 1.0. And right now, looks like things are fairly mellow. But there is some definitely some sunspot regions to watch. This one down here facing us, and up here as well. Looks like C flare activity 99% certainty. M flare at 55, 10% for the X flare. Proton event was elevated overnight. That is because we had a slight minor proton event. It was lighting up the global delayer map down at the polar regions and way up here, and that's normally a sign of a polar event, but no word of it yet from the solar ham site. But that is elevated to 10%. And let's see what we got here for these sunspots today. Oh. It looks like this one here is starting to get its act together a little bit in terms of the structure. This one up here as well. This one's kind of grown as well too. So we got at least 3. Maybe we'll continue to watch this one here, number 4, over the Earth-facing side of the sun that we need to watch here for some further flaring. These things can pop up out of the blue. So the dynamics are there in terms of the structure of the sunspots and the magnetic fields, but right now it looks stable. Not flaring at the moment, but that, again, that can change in the blink of an eye. Aurora levels somewhat elevated for the dark side of the Earth, or should I say unlit side of the Earth, however you want to take that. Not for sure exactly where that's coming from. It wasn't really forecasted. The forecast right now looks fairly minimal, but we did have a coronal hole that's been facing us for a day or so. It's now starting to shift away from us, so it could be in relation to that coronal hole that was lined up in the Earth view direction, like literally perfectly lined up with the Earth plane, or sun plane out here, center disk. All right, folks, I'm going to jump off here. I have a boatload of essays that I got to get done here before Monday, so I'm going to be swamped on this end. Not even joking. So I got to get busy on that, and we'll be back here later tonight. We'll definitely be watching this activity throughout the day today with the earthquake movement, and we'll of course jump on here if anything drastic happens. Till then, enjoy your Saturday. Stay warm and dry if you are out here in the western states, because it's a little chilly still. Well, it's starting to warm up. The sun's coming out, so alrighty. Have a good one. We'll catch you guys a little bit later on tonight. Take care.